Today, I have the honor to have a very special guest with me, and I want to introduce you to Jodie Keegans. Welcome, Jodie.
Hi. Yeah, okay.
Now, Jodie, you reached out to me online. This is not a typical uh, interview that I do. Normally, I interview people that are in the business industry or give on the health industry in different areas. But recently, my focus has been shifting more and more about creating awareness in the Department of Domestic Violence. And you recently saw a video of me speaking, and that's how you reached out to me because you have an unbelievable, incredible story, which sadly is more common than most people realize. So,
Yes.
Jody, would you mind just sharing a bit of your story, and then I would like to ask you. Well, we'll get to how we got there, how we got to the worst part. But can you
Mm.
share what you shared with me?
Okay. So, I met my ex-husband in June 2004, and that was in a nightclub. I'm from England, UK, so it was like a pub nightclub, and he was a perfect gentleman. He was really, really nice, and they love bomb you. So you thought, oh wow, this is a great person, perfect Prince Charming. And we ended up going exchange numbers. He made sure that I got saved from a taxi home, and then he said about going on a date the next day. Went on this perfect date. It was really, you thought, wow, like sweeps you off your feet. And then it started. He met my mum and dad really quick. He wanted to meet them. It was all very fast, and then we got to the point where we we started to buy a house together. We was dating, so it was only a few months into it, but we started to buy a house, and I fell pregnant with a baby, and unfortunately I lost that baby. But then we tried again, and I fell pregnant with my eldest son. So we bought a house together, had this perfect life, what I thought of. Looking back at it, it wasn't, because he started being very controlling towards friends very early on. So he would say, oh, you don't want to be with this friend, they are not suitable, but probably give you a reputation, made excuses. So then I believed him, and I thought, okay, yeah, well, maybe he's right. So that's the first stage. What I found was he started isolating me from friends who were being long-term friends. um, and then we got married in 2009, and strangely enough I had a horror movie themed wedding, but my life turned into a horror movie afterwards. And we had our middle son. So everything sort of was working okay. So we was actually together for 13 years, me and my ex-husband. And then, so I just thought it was sort of normal. It was very sort of controlling, but I did not see it. I didn't know that it was control, isolation, like I said. And then it changed so in 2012, we had our daughter together. And then, so it was all, all kind of okay. And then it got to 2015, and his behavior started completely changing. And he did have a drug problem. He was very bad on cannabis. Not that it's an excuse, it just it accelerated it as well. I used to work for a large company who sells hair and beauty products. I worked for them 15 years, and then I wasn't allowed to work for them. So he stopped me from working. And then once I finished that job, when I tried to look for a job, he wouldn't let me look for a job. So he stopped that. So then it got to 16, and that was when he first physically assaulted me. So he physically assaulted me. I believe it was in the kitchen. I don't actually remember what it was. And then it got to a point where every single day he, assaulted me more and more. And it just became very normal to me. and in a short amount of time, really, to say how long, many years we was together, but it was always there. It accelerated a lot, really, really fast. So in 2016, I was basically had to stay in the house. I was isolated, and my sister, I only have one sister. My sister died of cancer in July 2016, and I wasn't allowed to go to my sister's funeral, and he also stopped me going to friends' weddings, but my sister's funeral, he said I wasn't allowed to go to. So it was getting increasingly worse. We have a system over here called social services, and they got involved in September, I believe, because my daughter at the time, she was 5 years old at the time. She went to school and said that Daddy's hurting Mummy by the birdie wallpaper, which in the bedroom there was wallpaper with birds. And so she told a teacher, and the school is so good on safeguarding the primary school. So they listened to my 5-year-old daughter. And what happened then, so they contacted social services, and also some neighbours had contacted social services to make sure, because they was worried. So when social services got involved, my ex-husband refused to want me to have contact with social services. So they actually had to do a court order. They kept seeing more signs. They kept getting, they tried multiple times to, come see me, but my ex-husband wouldn't let me open the door. Then he would continuously beat me in the house once they came, because it was the fact that he was losing power and control. And that's the element of domestic abuse, is power and control. And he was losing it. So we get to December 2017. And basically what happened was we had to go to court, and to family court, and George ruled that my ex-husband had to leave the house. And that was when it accelerated very, very fast, because in that final week, just before Christmas, he was told that he had to leave the house, and that was when he was losing power and control. But for like a year and a half before that, he did all sorts of different things, like as control. I wasn't allowed a mobile phone. I wasn't allowed a Facebook account. I had it, but I wasn't allowed to go on it. We had to sleep downstairs in the living room, so he knew everywhere where we was, even at night. So we had to sleep on I used to make a makeshift bed out of the sofa, and brought a single mattress down. So me and my 3 children and my ex-husband had to sleep downstairs in the living room, so he knew where we was all the time. And then what happened, so there was always control. And when we get to December, when he got told that he had to leave the house, he said he's going to leave, but he's not going at all. He says that he's going to be at the house, and so, because he didn't want to leave, be told what to do. So I was very, very scared. I was thinking, wow, what we're going to do to get out of this situation. And it was a Friday evening, and that was when the final assault. He'd done a lot of previous assaults before. I mean, I have a big scar on my face, and that was due to where he punched me in the kitchen. And I actually had to, I wasn't allowed to go to hospital or seek any medical care. So I actually glued my face together with nail glue. And he had also, a few days prior to the I call it the week from hell, he had actually ripped my ear off at the top, and I actually had to glue it on with semi-permanent eyelash glue. Sorry, it is a bit graphic, mine. And because I wasn't allowed to go to hospital, because if I went to hospital, they would start questioning, do you know why? Do you know this has happened? So I wasn't allowed to go. So when it was a Friday night on the 22nd of December 2017, I wasn't allowed to go to sleep. My ex-husband, that happened for months and months and months prior. But my ex-husband actually took out a rolling pin from the drawer in the kitchen, because a lot of abuse happened in the kitchen because of weapons. And he proceeded to beat me for 2 hours with a rolling pin and stamp on me. He only stopped when he was tired, and he said, "Go lay down and go to bed because I'm tired." So I had to go stumble into my makeshift bed on the floor in the living room. The next day, I woke up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and he got up and he says, "Get him." I always remember this. He says, "Get in this kitchen now." So I got up and I knew it was coming, and I went into the kitchen, and he proceeded to beat me again for another 2 hours in the morning. So it was just a prolonged attack. It wasn't a frenzied attack. It was prolonged and like fought out. So at that point, I had so many bruises. I'm actually a qualified makeup artist. So when I had bruises before, I could cover them up with camouflage makeup. So people didn't see because I was trying to hide what he'd actually done because I was very ashamed. Um, so at that point, I had so much bruises. I had actually 95% bruising over my body that I couldn't physically cover up those bruises with makeup. So, and I remember he actually said, so he beat me in the morning and he just went, "Get up and get changed and get ready, just in case somebody came." And I was not feeling very well at all. I thought, God, I've never felt like this. I just felt so ill. So I went upstairs and looked at myself in the mirror and thought, wow, what on earth am I going to do this? I just look like a corpse. So and then I thought I need to get out the house. So I thought, right, okay, so I'm going to get a plan. And we live in the UK, and we have like I think called terraced houses, where they're all conjoined houses, and you can see literally to the next house over like literally a road between it. So I was going to write a note on a piece of paper in bright red lipstick and say SOS, please call the police, and put it up at the window so a neighbour would see it. But the neighbour who I knew would help me, she wasn't in. So there was nobody who could help me. And then I stumbled back into the back bedroom where the children sleep, and I looked out the window to see about maybe climbing out the window, but I risk assessed it because of the damage that I had to my feet. I was struggling walking due to the severity of him beating and stamping on me with his feet and punching me with a rolling pin. And I ended up thought, right, I can't do this, and I just thought I need to try and get out. So I thought I'm just going to have to pacify him, and hopefully when he leaves the house to go and maybe buy drugs or what have you, that he would that's when I'm going to escape with the children. I had no form of communication. I had no mobile phone because he had it. I was given one by social services. He hid it from me, so I couldn't find it. So I had no way of communication at all. And luckily, there was a knock at the door. He'd just been in the bedroom and he'd just been beating me up in the bedroom. And there was a knock on the door, and that was the last time that I actually saw my ex-husband, because I was coming down the stairs and he ran down the stairs behind me. I could always remember his breath on the back of my neck as he was coming down, and he ran out the back kitchen door and ran and hid, so and escaped. So I came and opened the door, and there was two police officers who was there who had been called. So they came, and I let them in the house, and I went to the back door, made sure that it was locked so he couldn't get in. And I then went, so these two police officers came in. I asked the children if they could go upstairs to play on Xbox because Mum's just going to do some talking. So they went upstairs, the three children, and the police said, "Are you okay?" They kind of thought something was a bit strange. And I said, and I just started strangely taking my clothes off, because I used to wear clothes to cover my bruises. So we're in the summer and I'd wear like a long cardigan, anything to cover my bruises. And I just started taking my clothes off, and they were faced with this whole body of 95% bruising. And I just said to the police, I says, "I think I'm a victim of domestic abuse." And they just said, wow, in my 14-year career, I've never seen anything like this. So they said, "Where is he?" So I said, "Look, what do you want to see what he looks like?" So I gave them his passport, so they knew who to look for. And then they said, "We need to get you out and take you to hospital." I went to hospital. I went to a centre with my children, and my children was actually going to be taken into a refuge. So the children would have had it where they've just seen their mother nearly get murdered by their dad, and then taken to a completely different part of the country for their own protection. And then their dad was out, and arrest warrant was out for his arrest. Luckily, they arrested him, they found him, and he had actually come back to the house after he had escaped. And I then went, after the children was then allowed to go to my parents' house, so then I went to hospital. It was the first time that I found out what the extent of my injuries was, because I've never been able to have medical assistance. And it turns out that I had fresh ones, and including the ones which had healed, so this was all done by my ex-husband. I had 9 broken ribs, 6 spinal fractures, a broken shoulder, a broken arm, a broken leg, and a broken thumb. I nearly lost my foot due to an infection that happened because of the damage it did to my foot. And I have a 95% bruising. So when you have a high amount of bruising, your body releases a chemical to help you with your to sort your body out, to bring it back. But that problem as well, you can have organ failure. So I was at huge risk of organ failure. They did not even know how I survived this. So I was in hospital for 5 days. I came out of hospital, and then this is when the fun kind of really starts as well, because he was in prison on remand. He got arrested on Christmas Eve. He got arrested. And so he was in like our prison for remand while the trial was going on. And the social services actually gone in to see him in the January into prison. And he actually told social services that he actually applied for bail twice. And he thought he was going to come out on bail. And when he came out on bail, he was going to come and kidnap the children. So I had that threat of him kidnapping the children. He never got bail, because when you risk to kidnap children, you're not going to get that. So I was in the trial period in 2018. I had to, at the time, I wasn't allowed to live in the house, but also I didn't want to live in the house because that was where my death was going to happen, where all the abuse happened, and it was like a crime scene. So I put the house up for sale because I needed to as well. He ended up, so I had the sale of a house, but I actually sold the house a few times, but he refused to sign the house sale. So that was going on while court was going on. So it was August 2018. I was in Sheffield Crown Court, and we didn't know. We was actually going for. He actually we had 18 charges on him, which is a lot. He pleaded guilty. He pleaded not guilty at first, and then he pleaded guilty to the physical charges because there was so much evidence against him. But we was actually going to court for the rape and sexual assaults on myself, and that was what we were going to court for. So I was in court, and that was the first time that I had seen him since that last day. And I actually wanted to go in. I didn't want any screens. I didn't want no special measures. I wanted to be in the courtroom. So I ended up, I went in and made sure I knew where he was. I just went in and just wanted to look fabulous, just to have that show that I've changed. You did this, and that you didn't break me. You made me a stronger person. So we did the court. That was in for, I think that it was about a week that was in court, and it got to a verdict. We didn't know how long he was going to get. We got anywhere from a couple of years, 5 years tops. And when we was actually in court, he got found guilty of the rape and sexual assaults. One of the sexual assaults was the actual rolling pin, which he tried to kill me with. He had actually sexually assaulted me with that rolling pin as well. So we ended up going to court. He got found guilty, and we ended up getting, we was in the next day, we got sentencing. He actually got sentenced to 18 years in prison, which is a huge number. But also the fact that I only found out after that I actually had only a 5% chance of winning my case, because 5%, because it's very hard to prove that you've been raped or sexually assaulted by your husband or your partner. But I won that case on such small like figures that I had, like percentage. So I was really proud of that. And then so he he got 18 years. I then started, I was wanting to raise awareness of domestic abuse because I didn't want anybody going through what I did. And he ended up, I did for our local police in South Yorkshire. I did some work with them, and which went out in the media about my story. It was called #Jodie's Story, and it got a lot of people looking at it. And then we ended up having like our big media outlet in the UK. They contacted me and asked me if I would do some work for one of our big tabloid newspapers. So I said yes. I wanted to raise awareness, and it did really well. It went in a lot of newspapers, and it actually did go worldwide. So it had been in a lot of different countries. I did not expect that in the slightest. I'm just glad that it reached a huge audience. However, all this was going on, and I was actually being financially abused by my ex-husband. So I had physical abuse from him, emotional abuse, coercive control. I'd say coercive control is horrible. That's probably one of the worst. Sexual abuse, and then financial abuse. So it ended up being that he refused to sign the house sale. So whenever I had the opportunity, I sold the house, it fell through. And I ended up getting repossessed the house. So then, unfortunately, I had to go bankrupt. So and bills which was in my name and in both our names, I was having to pay his share of the bills. So that's something that I always want to raise awareness of, his financial abuse as well, because I found that he was getting debt written off because he's in prison. And they said, oh, there's no point in chasing that debt. We'll just write thousands of pounds off. Myself, I was the one who had to pay it. So I've actually had to go bankrupt. So from this, I actually was made homeless. I live with my parents now. So I'm classed as homeless, but I'm not officially, because I live with my parents, thank God. But I ended up being, so I've literally lost my house, being bankrupt, and it never ends. The financial abuse, it's ongoing. So this is a part of my life that is like a never ending story. So, but yeah, there was all sorts of, I mean, there's so many different things that would happen, like simple things like how I made the coffee. If he wasn't happy how a coffee was made, then he would, it had to be made a certain way. This is why I'm really good at making coffee now. He would smash a coffee and throw it against walls and beat me up over coffee. One of the things he did, we had a 10-week-old puppy, and he killed the 10-week-old puppy, which was absolutely devastating. I used to be in the car, and he used to beat me up in the car. We had a black Mercedes car with tinted windows. So I'd be on the motorway, and he'd be driving 70 miles an hour, because they like the fact that they've got the control being in a car. And I would be beaten in the car at high speeds. And because the car had blacked out windows, I could see out, but people couldn't see in, so people couldn't see me getting beaten up. So it is quite frightening, to be honest. I mean, one of the things that I look completely different to how, I mean, I don't know if you can see this so well. I have some photos of that was me. And that was like the cut on my ear there that was glued. And these were a lot of the bite marks. I had bite marks on me, bruising. Then, I mean, I've got a huge file of different ones, but it's like that one. You can't even see, but it's yeah. And I mean, I remember the first time I ever saw these photos. I actually saw them, and I said to my these was like my legs, and that one. And I remember saying when I first saw him for the first time, I said to my CID, who was amazing, who worked on my case, the police detective, Stephen Barnes, was amazing. I said, that poor girl. And he said, that's you. But I don't sort of, I'm very disconnected from that person. This is why I'm very fine about speaking out. Because whatever happened that day, somebody else, I'm very strong-minded now. I really, really strong-minded. I never used to be able to talk. I always used to look at the floor and never speak to anybody. Now I do the opposite. I will talk to anybody. I don't care who you are, I will talk to you. I mean, one of the things that I always say is it doesn't matter who you are, it affects whether you are male, female, children. Unfortunately, the children get lost in this. I have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, surprise, surprise, and my 3 children do as well. So it's affected the whole family. I have really bad triggers with rolling pins, so I had to be in therapy to like exposure therapy for rolling pins. So if you're having a cooking show on and people have rolling pins, I freak out. Same as black Mercedes cars, I would freak out if I saw a black Mercedes car, and people with navy blue hoodies. So I was in a lot of therapy for that. But I'm glad that what happened, because at the moment he got like the 18 years in prison. If he hadn't did what he did, he probably wouldn't have got a lot, to be quite honest with you, which is so not good. So it's only thing is he in this country, like we got the 18 years, he serves 9 inside prison, and the rest of the 9 years will be out on license. So he will be out. So in theory, he's actually going to be out in 6 years. So one of the things that people want me to do is they want me to move, and I refuse to move, because I think, you know what, you've messed my life up. I am not having you wreck the rest of mine and my children's life and my family, my parents, because I've got elderly parents. So I refuse to leave. I will put lots of like security in place when he's out, but I refuse to leave because I am not having him drive me out of my childhood home where I am now. So,
I
and I
totally
don't
get.
want him to win.
Yeah,
That's the
no,
main thing.
I totally get where that comes from. I totally do.
Yes,
So Jodie, that was absolutely incredible, the story.
thank you.
You are a miracle because for many reasons. One, you're alive.
Yes.
2, you are a miracle that I would call a hero for coming forward and actually wanting to um, share your story. And I call anybody who comes forward and shares a story for the purpose to help somebody else, to me, is a hero.
Thank you. Because I would not want anybody going through what I did. And it's not a case of maybe, mine wasn't that crazy. Mine's a really crazy story. Abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter how big or small it is, it's abuse. So
Yes.
you don't want it go to my lengths. You want to get out, and definitely that's what I always say, never compare anybody's abuse, because it's not like a score sheet. It's abuse is abuse, whatever it is, and it's not acceptable.
And that's why we're sharing stories,
Yes.
right? Now, you shared your story, and now, if you don't mind me, I'm putting myself in the shoes of the viewer,
No problem.
and in the shoes of the listener, because I understand where you're coming from.
Yes.
I've had my own experience, but there are a lot of people who may be watching this or listening to this who may have a whole bunch of questions. So I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you those questions.
Yes, no problem. And I probably have an idea what one is, to be quite honest, because it's the famous question that always comes out, and it's, why didn't you just leave?
Why didn't you just leave?
Just
Didn't then?
leave.
Okay, so let's start with that one, since that's the first one. I have several questions.
That's fine. That's not a problem. But yes,
Let's start with that.
well, he'd actually threatened to kidnap the children and disappear.
When
Um,
was this? Was
This
after?
was, yeah, he said, no, this was before. He'd actually made threats before that he was going to kidnap the children, disappear, make my life absolute hell. And the worst thing that I could ever do is get on the wrong side of him. So the other thing is that where he will not stop. He was stalking me. Even when we was like, even if I was managed to get out the house, he would stalk me without a doubt. He was doing it when, like, if I was having to take the children to school, when I was allowed to take the children to school, he would go down the streets. He would, because there's like a staggered between my two children, three children's schools. So I would take the two young ones to primary. He'd took the eldest to high school, and he would come back and start looking around the streets where I was and see who I was talking to. So he would make my life pure hell. But also because we had a house, I knew that the danger that he would pose. Also, I had no money at all, nothing. When I left that house, I had literally the bloodstained clothes, what was left on me. All my clothes were ripped. I had no clothes left. Luckily, one of the police officers donated me some clothes, but I had nothing, no phone, no, absolutely nothing. And I knew that if I was to go to my parents, he would make living hell. So there's so many barriers, but also it is the most dangerous time is leaving, because once they've lost that power and control, then that is very, very scary. So you've got to execute that escape perfectly, because if you don't, then it is an absolute nightmare. And unfortunately, a lot of people do die when they actually leave. So this is a huge one, is the fact that there's that risk of death. And I believe that, well, he did try to kill me because the fact that he had lost the power and control. But yes, it's not easy. And being also told that you have to go somewhere where you've got no money, a completely different place in the middle of nowhere, like literally telling somebody to pick their lives up and just go. It's really hard, to do that. But also I had no support, absolutely nothing. But mainly it was the fact that it was a threat that he'd actually previously done. So
did any of the neighbors ever hear?
yes, the
And they
neighbours
never
did.
reported anything?
They were scared. Now there was ones who did. They reported it. However, there was some brilliant neighbours who was actually attached onto my house, and they was actually building up evidence, which I did not know that they were building up evidence. So if I needed it, I had it. However, my ex-husband actually threatened the neighbours previously, so this is why they could have, but they was outstanding, because it's a really, really hard one. The fact that, I mean, yeah, like I say, there was ones who rung social services up. She was a great lady, but it was the fact that they knew the fact that the danger I was in, so they were scared as well. That is the thing, because like when they used to see what he was like and threaten them, so that's why they were scared, point blank. But they were been so much great support. They really have.
So, next question.
Okay.
In hindsight, because hindsight they say is 2020,
Mm-hmm.
right? Looking back, as you said, he swept you off your feet. Everything was wonderful. Sign one.
Mm-hmm.
Potential red flag. Not like we
Yes.
want relationships to be amazing. We
Yeah,
want to be swept off our feet. That is all good. So
but yeah,
in itself is not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
yeah,
It's in
definitely.
combination with other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here, let's piece it together. Let's piece together the red flags that were there in advance.
Okay.
Before it got to that physical stage, because it
Yes.
didn't happen overnight. It didn't
No,
happen.
did it? Very drip fed. I always like to have it, like, use the analogy, but it's like carbon monoxide poisoning. You don't know it's there, you can't see it, but it's a slow killer.
Yeah,
So you can have it.
it's a slow conditioning of the brain, right? It's a
It
slow
is.
intimidation. That's why I asked you. I mean, I knew the answer, but why? That's the very common question. Like, you already knew what I was going to ask you. People are going to ask, why didn't you just leave?
Yes.
Because this is not something that just happened. You didn't just get together and went from
No,
happy roses the next day
no,
he's he's beating you up.
yeah,
That's not what happened.
no.
It was just gradual, bit
Hmm.
by bit, but like
Yes,
you
it
don't even
does.
recognize it. You kind
You
of
don't even know it's happening. It's so scary. It's the most craziest thing that you don't, and it's the fact that it's the person who you married, the person who you're supposed to love you, and they're doing this cruel things, and you don't even know that it's even happening. It's very much it's one of those where if you're in that situation, you can understand. You can get some people who say, well, maybe she's just stupid. And it's like, no, it happens to. I mean, I was very lucky. I went to a show from Melanie B from the Spice Girls. She did a show. She is a survivor of domestic abuse. And I did meet and greet with Melanie B from the Spice Girls. And we were both saying it doesn't matter whether, so I told about my story and she was fabulous. And we said, end of the day, we both came out with the same thing. You know, whether you're famous, it doesn't matter who you are, it will affect everybody. It doesn't mean just if you're just a normal person on the street to being somebody who's really, really like a celebrity or anybody, it affects you the same way. And that was really nice, you know, to work that out with each other. But for me, one of the things that I'm huge on is education. Why the hell are we not taught about this at school? So where we are, we have sexual abuse, sexual, you know, about sexual health, drugs, alcohol, gambling. We fail about domestic abuse when that is a bigger killer than cancer. Why? It affects in this country, so I'm talking UK, it will change at the moment because we've got COVID-19, but it affects 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men. So one of the things I love doing is being in a public space when there's a lot of people, when that normally happens, not like we are now, and think, wow, do you know what? Somebody who they know, somebody in this bit is going to know somebody or have experienced domestic abuse, whether it's physical abuse, emotional, sexual abuse, financial abuse, or forced marriage or coercive control. It's abuse, it's abuse. So that's what I always like to do. And it's so important. If I had that education when I was at school, at high school, I would not be in that relationship. I'd have left. I'd have known that this wasn't right. But I don't get my head round that it's okay that we're not even taught this in schools when it's so, so important. So and also like I find it crazy that like in our country we have judges in court, they are not trained in it. We have like social services are not particularly trained in domestic abuse, same as doctors, all these medical professions, you know, all sorts. A lot of police aren't as well. They have specialist police officers who were fantastic. The police officer who worked in my case was outstanding, but unfortunately there's so much that they've got to fit in, and they need to have the education. This is why one of the things that I'm doing with my friend who's an amazing survivor as well, we're actually writing domestic abuse course about for professionals to teach about domestic abuse but from a survivor's point of view. So because we are experts in experiences, there's no question that no one can throw at us that we don't know the answer to. So this is what we are wanting to do, is to raise awareness, to teach people and to stop, you know, this. And that is what we've been working on. So it is really, really good that we are doing that. And we was actually working in our university for doing some videos, but that's all actually got stopped with the lockdown. So we'll be continuing that when we're back open. But just it needs to be really, really taught so, so much. And also for children to understand that when they are 16, that it is not suitable for people to ask them this, you know, oh, it's okay to send like even like indecent pictures. No, they should, because that goes on the internet, they'll use that as a way of blackmail. So in its teaching, I mean, that is what I do with my children. My children know a lot about it. My daughter now is 7 going on 17, and I believe that she will work with me and continue doing, because she even speaks about it now when she's and she'll freely talk about it. which can scare a lot of the other children, unfortunately, but she's very, very good advocate for it. So I would like to, and my sons as well, they will speak about their experiences, but they'll take it in different ones. My eldest son, he's okay about it. My youngest son will not talk about it at all. He's probably one of the worst ones affected. And my daughter will talk about it. So it affects children in different ways. And I think there needs to be more support for the children, because I found that there wasn't enough support for the children, and it's left to us, the survivors, to make sense of all this, what's happened for the children. I'm just quite lucky the fact that I threw myself into training. I mean, when I did this, the best thing I ever did was go on domestic abuse courses. So I became a facilitator of a really great course called the Freedom Program by a lady called Pat Craven. And the other thing I did was went on loads of different courses to do with domestic abuse, lots of voluntary work, and I've actually just been doing my teaching certificates as well to become a qualified teacher in this subject. So I just want to turn like a huge negative situation into a massive positive, which has come out because now I know what direction I want to do in life. I never, when I was there, I didn't know what I was meant for. Now I definitely know what I want to do, and what does not kill you makes you stronger. That's what I feel. So
Well,
it's
you're
good.
doing
And
great work.
thank you.
Unfortunately, out of a horrible situation. Another question for you. So going back
Sorry.
to the hindsight, no, that's all good. Going back into hindsight, had you known the red flags in advance, because the reason we end up in those kind of
Hmm.
situations is we don't know what to look for. Like you said, we get swept off our
Hmm.
feet, and it's all wonderful. And then you got pregnant pretty quickly as well.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that
Hmm.
made you
There's a lot.
bonded with them so
Water has,
quickly.
yes.
Yeah. So if now that you know what the signs are, even if it hadn't gotten well, yeah, now that you know what the signs are along the way, looking back, um, at what point in your personal relationship, if this was coming forward again, would
Hmm.
you say red flag, stop sign, I'm out?
Straight away. I think that if I do now know,
Straight
then
away, what?
I
When
think I
you
would have wanted to, what I know now. So, like, I'm in a new relationship now, and he's a really great guy. And, but I feel quite sorry for him because I'm constantly, checking. And, but he's great, and he's passed. He's done really well. But any sort of sign, I'd be like, no. And I think that you'd want to say, look, this, I think how I am now, I would say, you know what, but you can't do that. That isn't, acceptable behavior. I would challenge it.
which one?
And
At
I,
which point would you challenge him? Like
I
give me a
if
specific. I want to
so
help
if
people
he
who may
said,
be in a
so okay, so
relationship
if
right
he
now.
said to me, right, so if he said to me that not seeing this person, then I would be like, how come? No, this isn't right. You see your friends, I can't have that. If he said, right, you're not allowed on Facebook, I'd be like, why? Why am I not allowed on social media? I have friends in different countries. That's a great way to connect with my friends and keep up with them. Why? No. And I think that I'd want to educate them. I'd look at that, but then I'd also think, no, I'm not having this. And I'd like to think that if I didn't have any like ties, stuff like that, I'd be making a way of escaping. I would have done it completely different. It's just a nightmare that you've got so many ties, the fact you've got children, I would go about it a completely different way. But I do like that question. I've never been asked that before.
Yeah.
It's very
So
good. I like that.
here's your next question then.
Hmm.
Let's just say someone's watching this or listening to this isn't either not in a relationship, but eventually will be in a relationship, or is in a relationship with possibly an abuser that right now looks like Prince Charming. What advice, and maybe that person is Prince Charming. I don't know, maybe that person is the right
I know
person.
we could
But
be
yeah,
lovely
so
people out
what
there.
would
We could be
you,
awesome.
with from your own personal experience, from your own personal point of view,
Hmm.
and from your perspective, what would you advise someone who's saying, I just met the love of my life, I think this is the one?
Okay, yes, that's a good one. I would say, I would start asking, personally, I think I would start asking them, and checking, almost like doing like a test in my head, saying, so if they started saying, oh, well, he's not letting, we're just doing this, stopping yourself seeing people, I'd be like, oh, and I'd be explaining to them and saying, you know what, you've got to be careful here. This is what can happen. And I would start to educate. One of the things that I really found was a really helpful thing was called the Dominator, and it was one piece of paper, and it told you all the signs to spot for. And I quite often I actually just have it on my phone where I can just send it to people. And I say, if you see anything of this, then this is warning signs. So I would get them to look at warning signs and start thinking, is this right? And for them to get educated, I'm still back with the education, just so it protects them. It's such valuable knowledge. And just so they've got it for their own, or even they can help other people they could come into contact with. So they could have it where they learn it and everything's maybe great with them, because we don't want everyone thinking that everyone's horrible, because they're really not. There's just, this percentage out there where there are people who are not great people. So it would be a case of educating yourselves and then thinking, we have some great shows. I was lucky enough to go to the cinema before lockdown and watch a film called The Invisible Man, and that was fabulous. That portrayed domestic abuse amazingly. It was such a great film. I went to see it 3 times, and that was great. And it's great to see this on the big screen, and people think, you know what, that's kind of like what my relationship's like. But being in a huge film, which was amazing. I love that film. We have Netflix shows, so we've got like Dirty John, You, and it's great seeing this so people can look at it and identify and think, yeah. But then you get some people who think, oh yeah, he's just kind of hot guy, and they're always it's quite horrible, because they always seem to be really quite good looking, these abusers, which we don't want. But it is, because it's always a case. You quite find it's this Prince Charming, which they portray as, in theory, when we're kids, you want this Disney life. You see Disney, you're brought up with Disney films, and you think, oh my God, this is okay. I mean, like, one of the things that always bothers me is like the Disney films. There's so much domestic abuse in Disney films. Like Beauty and the Beast, she's locked in the castle and isolated by the beast. And same with like the Lion King, Scar, he's mistreats, the female lions, and it shows you back what he does. There's so many different ones. Rapunzel, she's trapped in a tower, and it's normalized through like this film where people, oh yeah, it should be okay, but it's not correct.
I
So
agree. And I think
yeah.
to add to that, if we at least I look at the movies that I grew up with. I don't really watch a lot of movies now, but I think a lot of them still do that, where there is that quick romance, that love at first sight, and they lived happily ever after. And
Yeah,
that is the film industry or
it is.
that encourages a lot of us to believe in the fairy tale, and it's not realistic to what really long-term happiness really
Yeah,
based
exactly,
on,
definitely.
right?
Because you think it's like in your head, you're growing up with, you want this beautiful house, a little white picket fence, you've got married, you've got children, it's all fabulous, and you've got this beautiful life. And to me, I've got a better life being a single parent on my own with my kids. They've got a lot better life. They in life for me is a lot nicer now. It's brilliant. So you don't need that to have a perfect life. It's what you make of life. And you never go to find yourself, you sort of discover yourself. So I'm definitely in a really, really good place.
Well,
So
I'm really
I do
happy to hear that. I'm
that.
really happy
Well,
to hear that, because I believe there are 3 stages, right? There's a stage where you are the victim, you are in that
mhm.
situation where you're trapped. And then when you're out of that, that's what I call, well, that's what everybody says, you're a survivor. Yes, you survive. But to me, survive and staying at the survival station, if you want to,
Yes.
it just means you didn't die, in my opinion. It
Mm.
just means you didn't die. And that's why I like the next phase is now become a hero, which is what you're doing. So let this suffering be of put it to good use so that
Yes,
you can help other
definitely.
people. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
commend you for that. I am so proud of you.
Thank
I
you.
feel blessed to have connected with you.
Oh, thank
And
you.
yeah, for
You're
you to
fabulous
sharing story.
too.
Yeah, and you're a public speaker now, and hopefully after this whole COVID thing, you're gonna be able
Yes.
to go on big stages. But you're still doing this,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
right?
I was going to say I was doing the big stage. I was just down in London before lockdown, so I was
Yeah,
kind of good with that because one of the things that we have over here is because we're in lockdown, um, domestic abuse has risen all across all across the world
yeah,
in our country.
yeah.
So we have the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, and we have which is our main one that you can ring up, and that's run by Refuge. Now that has had 156% increase in the traffic. So, but also what is found is that people are not reporting. So people are in houses at the moment. I always say that I think that these people who are in these houses at the moment experiencing domestic abuse, COVID-19, outstanding. They are warriors without a doubt because it was like walking on eggshells with us. They're walking on glass because they could run out and they've got the virus to go ahead. So that is amazing. These people, hats off to them. They are legends that they are doing this. And I think that a lot of people are not leaving at the moment because they are too scared. With us in this country, we haven't got enough refuges, so there's nowhere for them to go. So at the moment, I believe that that they're actually just they're pacifying their abusers, perpetrators, and then what they're going to do is once lockdown comes out, then they're going to leave. So this is why at the moment there's increase to all these sites because they are researching, what domestic abuse is and trying to get out a plan of escaping. Same as 46% rise in searches of what is domestic abuse has been found, and 64% rise in the search for domestic violence shelters. So people are educating themselves to get out, and but it's in the hospitals as well. There's people who's not getting treatment, like myself. I never got treatment, but people will be having things happening to them. I mean, the other thing is with domestic abuse, with the abuse, it might be that they're not that physically they're not abused, but it's making them have heart attacks and strokes. Because this actually happened to a friend of mine where the abuser was not being physical with her, but he was doing everything, and she had health issues, but she actually had a stroke. So it was actually wanting to kill her by her having a stroke. It's crazy, honestly. I'd like to say that some stuff doesn't surprise me, but it actually doesn't, because
Yeah,
the stuff that I hear every day is insane.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. And and the even sadder thing is, like you said, your children have witnessed, what was going on, and your children in other situations are witnessing that,
Mhm.
and this affects them for the rest of their lives. Whether they will be able to cope well with it through therapy,
Yes, yeah.
or whether they will not be able to cope with it, it will stay with them. It's part of their life. It's
It
part of
is. It
they,
will never go away. Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. And I've actually people that know me on this particular subject. I have been saying for months now, this needs to be education in the schools. The teachers have to be,
Right. Exactly.
that there is just so much education that needs to be out there. And I'm searching for an army of people who have gone through,
Mm-hmm.
uh, abuse, to unite. Basically, I'm
Yeah,
making a call
definitely.
out.
Well, I've got a
Let's
load of people
unite.
over here. If you need an army, I can get you a lot from the UK.
Let's unite. Let's share stories. Let's share the warning signs. Because I feel like domestic violence is like there is there's a big cliff, right? There's a cliff that you can't see, and people are taking this path, like this path that looks like it's uncharted. It looks uncharted. It looks
Yes.
like nobody's been through it because there's no sign through this
Yes.
path that anybody's walked through it. And then as you're going through this path, because you promised some wonderful thing at the end of that, or you think there's some wonderful thing at the end of that. As you're walking, you're tripping and you're falling, but you keep going with the bruises and the
Yes.
cuts. And then before you know it, you're at the end, you don't see it, and you end up falling in
Mm-hmm.
that, what do you call it? Like a big ditch, right?
Yes.
A deep
Yes.
down the valley. And I feel that it is our duty and our responsibility, those of us who have lived through our own
Yes.
abuse, I think it's our responsibility to start saying, you know what, this is the path. Here's a sign. This
Yeah.
sign means danger ahead. And as you're walking
Yes.
forward, here's another sign. There is a, you know, these are all the signs that as you go along this path, you can start looking at what these signs are. Because
Yes.
that, you know,
Definitely.
we hear, there are a lot of stories, like, you know, your story in a way is a happy ending because you
Mm-hmm.
lived, right? You
Yes, this
that.
is it. It's yeah, it's nice because everyone says that they get upset when they kind of meet me, and they get really upset listening to the story. But then I say, yeah, but you know that I'm alive, and you know that some good came out of this because I mean, I've helped a lot of people. I've had so many people come out to me, and I've helped so many people, and I'm glad, you know, that I've had a purpose. I feel like I've got a purpose in life now, and it's something that I'm really glad that I can do. And just on any level, be able to speak to different people, raise awareness, it's fantastic. And it's great, you know, that we can connect from different countries and see what's happened from across different areas, which is really, really good. I mean, one of the things that we have here, which is, I mean, like with, I know that there's like, we don't have guns particularly in this country. So you have to have a license. You can't just buy those. But with our murders, it seems to be more knives. We have a knife problem in this country. So unfortunately, that is kind of a weapon of choice. So it doesn't. So I know that there's probably. Don't get me wrong, there is shootings that goes off. There really is. I've got a great friend. Unfortunately, her mum was killed in front of her. She was shot. And so it does happen. You can get that was through a farm that you live on. So that's where she lived. And it was if they are acceptable, if they want to get them, they can do. And this can be the difference in contrast with different countries. But either way, people are going to find a weapon. End of the day, I got tried to get murdered with a rolling pin, and that's a cooking utensil. That's you can use anything, but then that's a blunt object, and
Yeah,
it really hurts when you get hit
yeah,
with one.
yeah. So don't feel safe just because there are no guns in the house.
Yeah, this is it, because you can
Yeah,
use anything as a weapon.
yeah,
So like
yeah.
like that with the like knives in the house. That's why the kitchen's the most dangerous place, and a lot of abuse happens in the kitchen, or murders because there's knives. And like with me, a lot of the abuse happened a lot in the kitchen because and there was weapons. I mean, I had knives put on my throat. It took a long time, but I had a knife cut on my throat. I had one on my arm. I have been having my arms tattooed over because I have a lot of, even now I have bruises from which will never go away. So I've been trying to cover something horrible into something beautiful with having some nice tattoos done. So that's what I've been doing. And a lot of them, I have one for my sister. We was huge Pink fans. I love Pink. She loves Pink. And the song "Just Like Fire" came out for when she died. So that's the song for my sister, "Just Like Fire." So I have the lyrics tattooed on my arm with rainbow butterflies and roses. So I have that on my arm. And then I have a phoenix on my arm as well with the "Stay strong, never give up." Because I always say, "Stay strong, never give up." That's one thing I always keeps me grounded, keeps me sane by saying that.
Well,
And then I have the bird cage.
you are a very strong person,
Thank
and
you.
we need more people like you. We do.
Oh, thank you so
Yeah, we
much. That's
do. We
really
really
kind.
do. So I really, really appreciate your time and
Oh, no
your
problem.
story and your willingness to be out there and helping others. Um, it's I literally I do have a million questions, but
It's okay.
I'm just
I
gonna
can talk
stop
for a long
here.
time, so I'm so sorry because I can
No,
talk a
no,
lot. I never used to talk, and I can talk loads now. So
no,
it's
that's
shutting me up. That's a problem now.
no,
Sorry.
it's all good. It's all good. I don't know. I might we might reconnect and maybe do a part two to this, just
Yeah, no problem.
to continue on with some of the questions that we
Mm-hmm.
may get from
Well,
viewers.
this is it. If you have anybody who wants to ask any questions, that's not a problem in the slightest. Or you could be there later on and think, oh, I should ask that. So that's not a problem at all. But we can do that, no problems.